When the gods felt the world tree scream, they thought it was Ragnarok come early. But this wasn't prophecy, it was something older, angrier, and built to never stop. He doesn't answer to fate, he doesn't kneel to pantheons. Every realm he enters learns the same lesson. Hell dies where he walks. So what happens when the god killer meets the god destroyer? The world tree screamed. Yggdrasil, the cosmic spine that bound the 9 realms in eternal balance, convulsed as something impossibly foreign tore through its bark. The wound was not a natural rupture, not a fracture born of age or divine war, but a puncture from beyond existence itself. Where the breach opened, reality itself seemed to recoil. The golden sap that flowed through the tree's celestial veins turned black and viscous, steaming as it dripped into the void between worlds. The wound pulsed with a light that was neither sun nor star, but the violent green luminescence of argent energy, a force the 9 realms had no name for, no defense against. The air around the rupture shimmered with heat and distortion, as if the tree itself was rejecting the intrusion, trying to seal what could not be sealed. But the damage was done. The barrier between dimensions had been violated, and through that violation, something ancient and unforgiving stepped into a universe that had never known its wrath. Mimir the Wise hung from Kratos' belt, his severed head suspended by enchanted leather, his eyes suddenly wide with terror that even centuries of imprisonment had not inspired. His mouth opened, but no words emerged for several heartbeats. When he finally spoke, his voice trembled with an emotion the god of war had rarely heard from the ancient advisor. "Brother, we need to leave this realm. Now. Immediately. Do not question me, do not hesitate, just move." Kratos stood motionless in the forest of light elves, his axe resting against his shoulder, his expression carved from stone. Atreus looked between them, his bow half drawn, sensing the shift in atmosphere but not understanding its source. The birds had stopped singing. The wind had died. Even the light filtering through the golden canopy seemed to dim, as if Alfheim itself was holding its breath. "What troubles you, head?" Kratos' voice was granite grinding against granite. Mimir's eyes darted toward the horizon, toward a direction that seemed to pull at something deep within the fabric of reality. "I can feel it, through the roots, through the branches, through every strand of Yggdrasil's consciousness. Something has entered the 9 realms, something that should not exist here, something that makes the Vanir wars look like children squabbling over toys." "A god?" Atreus asked, his voice tight. "Worse, something that kills gods the way you would crush an insect. And it's moving. Fast. With purpose." Mimir's eyes closed briefly, his consciousness reaching through the mystical network he maintained with the world tree. "Helheim. It's heading toward Helheim. No, it's already there." The realm of the dishonored dead had always been a place of cold suffering, of souls trapped in eternal regret and punishment. The bridge of the damned stretched across black waters where the unworthy drowned in their own failures for eternity. The great ship Naglfar sat rotting at its moorings, waiting for Ragnarok to set it free. The dead wandered through corridors of ice and despair, their movements slow and purposeless, their voices reduced to whispers of what they once were. Then the screaming started. Every soul in Helheim began to wail at once, a chorus of terror that shook the frozen realm to its foundations. The dead, who could no longer feel fear, who had been stripped of all emotion save regret, suddenly remembered what it meant to be prey. They fled in masses, scrambling over frozen corpses and through walls of ice, desperate to escape something that hunted through their realm with methodical precision. The Doomslayer walked through Helheim like judgment incarnate. His armor, scarred by wars across dimensions and eons, bore the marks of battles that would have shattered pantheons. The Praetor suit hummed with barely contained power, its systems monitoring a body that had been enhanced beyond mortality, beyond divinity, into something that existed purely to destroy. His helmet's visor gleamed with that same green luminescence that had torn through Yggdrasil, and beneath it, eyes that had witnessed the death of countless worlds burned with singular focus. In his right hand, the super shotgun hung ready, its twin barrels forged from metals no realm had names for. On his left arm, The Doomblade waited in its housing, a weapon of such brutal efficiency that it made the blades of chaos look ornamental. He was hunting. Hell's presence infected this realm. He could sense it in the architecture of suffering, in the design of eternal torment, in the very concept of a place dedicated to punishment and despair. It wore a different name here, operated under different rules, but the signature was unmistakable. Hell had touched this world, had perhaps been here long before the Norse gods claimed dominion, and where hell existed, the Doomslayer would follow, would cleanse, would eradicate every trace, until nothing remained but ash and silence. A Hell Walker lurched toward him, its frozen corpse animated by the realm's dark magic, its mouth open in a soundless roar. The Slayer's fist connected with its skull before it could complete the motion. The impact generated a shockwave that shattered the creature's entire upper body into crystalline fragments. He did not break stride. Two more emerged from the ice walls, their claws extended, their eyes empty. The super shotgun spoke twice. The sound was not the thunder of Norse storms, but something sharper, more final. A noise that seemed to cut through the very concept of existence. The Hell Walkers ceased to be, their forms reduced to particles that scattered across the frozen ground. He moved deeper into Helheim's heart. The realm's architecture began to shift around him, responding to his presence the way a body responds to infection. Corridors sealed themselves. Ice walls rose to block his path. The temperature, already far below what would kill any mortal, dropped further still, reaching levels that would freeze the blood of gods. The Slayer's armor systems compensated automatically, maintaining optimal combat temperature despite the impossible cold. He raised his left arm toward a wall of ice 12 feet thick. The flame belch ignited, projecting a cone of heat so intense that the ice didn't melt but vaporized instantly, leaving a passage through solid matter. Steam filled the corridor, billowing around him as he advanced through conditions that would have stopped armies. In the depths of Helheim, where even the damned feared to tread, something ancient stirred. Hel herself, daughter of Loki, keeper of the dishonored dead, felt the intrusion like a blade pressed against her throat. She sat upon her throne of frozen corpses, her form half living and half rotting, her domain an extension of her will. The dead were hers to command, hers to torment, hers to keep until the twilight of the gods. But this intruder did not acknowledge her dominion, did not pause at her barriers, did not fear her power. He simply walked through her realm as if she did not exist, as if her divinity was irrelevant to his purpose. She sent her strongest servants against him. The nightmares poured from the ice, creatures of shadow and freezing death that had ended gods in their sleep. They moved with supernatural speed, phasing through matter, striking from impossible angles. The Slayer's combat systems tracked every movement, his enhanced reflexes processing threats faster than thought. The heavy cannon emerged from his back-mounted weapon array, its rotational barrel spinning to full speed in microseconds. The mobile turret mode activated, and suddenly the corridor became a killing field. Armor-piercing rounds tore through spectral flesh with the same efficiency they had once used to shred Hell Knights and Barons. The nightmares shrieked as they discovered that their intangibility meant nothing against weapons designed to destroy demons that could phase between dimensions. He did not slow down. Hell's throne room doors, carved from a single block of primordial ice and sealed with magic older than the gods themselves, stood before him. They were designed to remain closed until Ragnarok, when Death herself would march at the head of her armies. The Slayer studied them for exactly 2 seconds. Then the ballista materialized in his hands, its argent core charging with a sound like reality being pulled taut. The bolt of pure energy that erupted from its barrel struck the door's dead center. The explosion that followed was not fire or force, but an annihilation of matter at the molecular level. The doors and 20 feet of corridor beyond them simply ceased to exist. Hell rose from her throne. She stood 12 feet tall, her left side beautiful and terrible in its divine perfection, her right side a corpse in advanced decay, bones visible through rotting flesh. Power radiated from her in waves that would have driven mortals mad and brought lesser gods to their knees. She was death incarnate, the end of all things given form and will. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the weight of countless souls she had claimed. You dare enter my domain uninvited? You dare destroy my servants, my gates, my realm? Do you know who I am, mortal? I am Hel, daughter of Loki, keeper of the dead, and you will kneel before. The Slayer shot her in the face. The super shotgun's discharge at point-blank range would have disintegrated a mountain. Hel's head snapped back, divine flesh and immortal bone momentarily overwhelmed by kinetic force beyond her comprehension. She staggered, more from shock than injury, her regeneration already working to repair the damage. But in that instant of distraction, the Slayer closed the distance. The Doomblade extended from his gauntlet with a sound like metal being born, and he drove it through her chest, through divine organs that had never known such violation, through the core of power that sustained her existence. Hel screamed. It was not pain that drove the sound from her throat, but disbelief. The blade that impaled her burned with a heat that had nothing to do with fire. It was the concentrated fury of a being who had spent eternity destroying evil in all its forms, who had never stopped, never rested, never shown mercy to those who preyed on the innocent. The blade did not just wound her body but attacked the very concept of what she was, forcing her divine form to acknowledge vulnerability it had never possessed. The Slayer leaned close, his visor inches from her face, and she saw what lay behind it. Not eyes, not a soul, but a void of such absolute dedication to his purpose that everything else had been burned away. He was not a warrior or a hero or even a monster. He was a function given flesh, a singular law of the universe made manifest. Evil will be destroyed. He ripped the blade upward, carving through her torso with mechanical efficiency. Hel collapsed, her form beginning to dissipate, her power scattering across the realm she had ruled for ages. The dead throughout Helheim felt their chains loosen. The suffering eased. The eternal cold began to warm. The Slayer did not watch her fall. He was already moving, his sensors detecting Hel's signature deeper still, beneath Helheim's foundation, in spaces that predated the Norse realms. He descended into darkness that even death feared. The corridors here were not ice but something older, walls that remembered the void before creation. Symbols covered every surface, runes that predated the Elder Futhark, markings that hurt to perceive. The Slayer's armor systems analyzed and categorized them, demonic but flavored by Norse metaphysics, a hybrid corruption that suggested Hel's influence had been here since the 9 realms were young. He followed the trail of taint through passages that twisted in ways that violated Euclidean geometry, through spaces where up and down lost meaning, where distance was a suggestion rather than a law. He found the source, a chamber vast beyond measure, carved into the roots of Yggdrasil itself, where corruption had been feeding on the world tree's essence for millennia. Argent siphons, hell-forged and grafted onto divine wood, pumped Yggdrasil's power into containment vessels that pulsed with sick green light. The energy was being stolen, refined, compressed, prepared for some purpose the Slayer understood all too well. Hel was building a gate, using the world tree itself as the power source, planning to flood the 9 realms with legions from dimensions the Norse gods could not imagine. The Slayer set charges. His armor's fabrication systems produced explosives calibrated specifically for this task. He placed them with surgical precision, positioning each charge to maximize disruption while minimizing damage to Yggdrasil itself. The tree was a victim here, not a collaborator. He would free it. The timer he set was generous by his standards. 30 seconds. Enough time to clear the blast radius. Enough time to begin the climb back to realms where gods still lived. The explosion that followed shook the 9 realms. Kratos felt it in Midgard, where he had traveled through the mystic gateway at Mimir's urging. The ground beneath his feet trembled with an impact that had nothing to do with earthquakes or divine battles. The sky flickered, reality itself suffering a moment of instability as Yggdrasil processed the destruction of corruption that had infected its roots for longer than any god could remember. The world tree was healing, violently, purging poison from its system with all the grace of a body rejecting lethal toxin. What was that? Atreus gripped his father's arm, his divine senses reeling from the metaphysical shockwave. Mimir's voice was hollow. That was someone destroying something in Helheim that should have been destroyed ages ago. Something we didn't know existed. Something that Odin himself probably didn't know existed, and whoever did it just made themselves the biggest threat to the established order since Surtur first lit his sword. Then we should help them, Atreus said with the conviction of youth. No, boy, Kratos' voice carried the weight of experience. We should prepare to fight them. The Doomslayer emerged from Helheim through a path he carved himself, his armor's jump jets igniting to carry him up through layers of frozen realm toward the surface. Behind him, Hell's infrastructure crumbled into nothingness, its taint burning away in fires that would not stop until every molecule of corruption had been purified. He landed on the bridge of the damned with enough force to crack the ancient stone, his boots leaving deep impressions in material that had endured millennia. The dead who still wandered the realm's edges gave him a wide berth, sensing that he was not there for them, that he had no interest in the innocent or the suffering, only in the evil that preyed upon them. A raven watched from the bridge's railing. The bird's eyes held intelligence far beyond any natural creature, ancient wisdom wrapped in feathers and bone. It studied the slayer with open fascination, tilting its head in a manner that suggested calculation rather than curiosity. Then it spoke, and its voice was not the caw of a bird, but the measured tone of someone who had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. Munin returns to the Allfather with interesting news. A warrior who kills death itself. A stranger who burns with light not of the 9 realms. Odin will want to meet you, Armored One. He will want to know what you are, what you want, and how you can be used or destroyed. The Slayer's response was to raise his shotgun and fire. The raven exploded in a cloud of feathers and divine essence, its physical form destroyed but its consciousness already fleeing back to Asgard, carrying images of the encounter to its master. The Slayer lowered his weapon. He had no interest in gods or their politics, no concern for their power structures or divine hierarchies. He was here because Hell was here, because corruption existed in these realms, and that was the only justification he needed. If the gods helped him, he would accept their aid. If they opposed him, he would go through them. The distinction was functionally irrelevant. He turned toward the exit from Helheim, toward the realm tower that would allow him to access other parts of Yggdrasil. His armor's sensors painted a tactical overview of the 9 realms, processing information his arrival had granted him through dimensional overlap. Helheim. Cleansed. Niflheim. Unknown status, heavy interference suggested either advanced technology or concentrated magic. Alfheim. Light and dark forces in balance, low probability of Hell presence. Midgard. High divine activity, possible nexus point. Asgard. Maximum divine concentration, likely center of power structure. Jotunheim. Sealed, inaccessible without specific key. Svartalfheim. Industrial realm, high potential for corruption. Vanaheim, nature realm, low probability. Muspelheim, fire realm, superficially similar to Hell but fundamentally different. He would visit each one. He would burn out every trace of Hell's touch. And if that meant bringing war to the gods themselves, then war would come. The realm tower stood silent as he approached, its ancient mechanisms responding to his presence with confused reluctance. He was not of the 9 realms, bore no divine blood, carried no Bifrost crystal or realm key, but his armor interfaced with the tower's systems directly, bypassing mystical security with technological precision, finding the universal mathematical constants that governed dimensional travel regardless of cultural interpretation. The tower's doors opened for him because, at a fundamental level, they could not conceive of a reason to remain closed. He selected Asgard. If Hell had influenced these realms, it would have started at the top, corrupting the seat of power before spreading its taint downward. The Norse gods, for all their might and magic, would have been easy prey for demonic manipulation. Pride, ambition, the hunger for knowledge and power, these were the cracks through which Hell had destroyed countless civilizations. The Slayer had seen it happen across dimensions, had arrived too late to save worlds where corruption had spread too far. He would not be late here. The Bifrost activated around him, not the rainbow bridge of legend, but raw dimensional energy compressed and focused through Yggdrasil's branches. His armor's shields snapped to full power, protecting him from forces that would have atomized any mortal and crippled most gods. The journey through realms lasted subjective seconds but covered distances that had no meaning in conventional space. When the light faded, he stood in Asgard, and Asgard stood ready for war. Einherjar warriors lined the courtyard in perfect formation. 300 of the greatest fighters in Norse mythology, souls of champions who had died in glorious battle and been granted eternal service in Odin's halls. Their armor gleamed with divine enchantment, their weapons forged by dwarven masters and blessed by gods. They stood between the Slayer and Odin's hall, an immovable wall of legendary prowess and immortal skill. At their head stood Thor, god of thunder, Mjolnir crackling with lightning that could shatter mountains and level cities. His red beard bristled with barely contained aggression, his eyes blazing with the joy of a coming fight. "So you're the one who's been making trouble in my mother's realm." Thor's voice boomed across the courtyard like the prelude to a storm. "Got to say, killing Hel takes some serious stones." "Stupid, but impressive. Now here's how this works. You kneel, you surrender your weapons, and you come peacefully to answer the Allfather's questions. Or you fight us all, die screaming, and we drag your corpse to answer them anyway. Your choice, but I'm hoping you pick the stupid option." The Doomslayer's response was to check his ammo count. Super shotgun, loaded. Heavy cannon, 3,000 rounds. Ballista, 8 shots. Rocket launcher, 12 missiles. Chain gun, 5,000 rounds. BFG 9000, 4 cells. Crucible, fully charged. The Unmaker, waiting. He had fought armies before, had stood alone against Hel's infinite legions, and emerged victorious. 300 warriors and a thunder god, no matter how skilled or divine, were simply another target array. He started walking forward. Right then, Thor grinned, hefting Mjolnir. "The stupid option, my favorite." The thunder god moved first, launching himself forward with speed that contradicted his massive frame. Mjolnir swung in an arc that displaced air with such violence that the shockwave alone could have leveled buildings. It was a strike meant to end the fight in a single blow, to demonstrate overwhelming superiority and break the enemy's will before the real battle began. The hammer connected with the Slayer's torso dead center, driving him backward 15 feet, his boots carving trenches in Asgard's golden streets. Then he stopped. Thor's eyes widened slightly. Mjolnir, the weapon that had killed Jormungandr, that had shattered armies and crushed giants, had failed to so much as dent the Praetor suit's armor. The Slayer's helmet tilted up to meet the Thunder God's gaze, and in that moment Thor understood that he had miscalculated. This was not going to be a demonstration of divine superiority. This was going to be an actual fight. The Slayer grabbed Mjolnir. His gauntleted hand closed around the hammer's head, halting its backward momentum toward Thor's grip. The Thunder God pulled, his divine strength enough to drag islands from their moorings, but the hammer didn't move. The Slayer's armor locked his position, his boots sinking into solid stone to create an immovable anchor point. Then he pulled back. Thor, god of thunder, son of Odin, was yanked forward off balance. The Slayer's fist connected with his jaw, a blow enhanced by armor servos and delivered with technique refined across dimensions. The sound of impact was like a mountain falling. Thor spun through the air, crashed through a building, and rose laughing. "Now that's more like it." Lightning exploded around him, arcing between clouds that had suddenly gathered overhead, channeling directly into his body until he glowed with electrical fury. "No more testing. Let's see what you're really made of." The Einherjar attacked as one. They moved with perfect coordination, a battle formation practiced for centuries, every warrior knowing their role and executing it flawlessly. Spears thrust from 3 angles simultaneously while swords cut from 2 more, creating an interlocking death trap that left no room for escape. The Slayer's combat computers processed their movements, identified patterns, calculated optimal response trajectories. The dash ability triggered, propelling him laterally through space in a burst of kinetic energy that left after images. He appeared behind the first rank of warriors, his Doomblade already in motion, the weapon carved through divine armor like it was cloth. Einherjar fell, their immortal bodies learning what it meant to be mortal again, their legendary prowess meaning nothing against a warrior who had fought enemies that existed outside the concept of death. The Slayer moved through their formation like a scythe through wheat, every motion precise, every strike fatal, no energy wasted on flourish or excess. He was not fighting them, he was processing them, eliminating targets with the same efficiency he had used on demons across countless dimensions. Thor crashed into him from above, Mjolnir leading with the full force of a lightning strike. The impact created a crater 60 feet across, shattering Asgard's supposedly indestructible streets down to bedrock. Lightning earthed through the Slayer's armor, millions of volts seeking to fry the organic components beneath. His shields held, barely, dumping excess charge into capacitors designed to handle far worse. He rolled to his feet as Thor struck again, 3 rapid hammer blows that rang against his armor like the tolling of cosmic bells. Each impact drove him deeper into the stone, each strike carrying enough force to destroy conventional matter. The Slayer blocked the 4th strike. His gauntlet caught the hammer's head, stopping it dead. Electricity arced between them, the Praetor suit's systems struggling to contain energy output that would have powered cities. Through the lightning's glare, the Slayer's other hand rose, the super shotgun leveled at Thor's face. At this range, the discharge would do serious damage even to a god's immortal flesh. Thor's eyes widened with recognition of his mistake. The shotgun blast caught him full in the chest, the kinetic impact breaking his grip on Mjolnir and hurling him backward. The Slayer spun, using the hammer's momentum, and threw it. Mjolnir crossed the courtyard as a supersonic projectile, its enchantment screaming in protest at being used against its master's will. Thor raised his hand by instinct and reflex, and the hammer returned to his grip, but the motion cost him precious seconds. The Slayer was already moving. The equipment launcher deployed from his shoulder mount, tracking systems locked on Thor's center mass. 3 frag grenades launched in rapid sequence, their trajectories calculated to catch the Thunder God regardless of evasive action. Thor swung Mjolnir in a defensive arc, lightning forming a shield, but the grenades were not conventional explosives. They were demon tech, modified from weapons the Slayer had taken from Hell's own armories and improved with UAC engineering. The detonations bypassed the lightning shield, concussive force striking Thor directly, staggering him. The ballista fired. The argent bolt punched through Thor's shoulder, divine flesh offering no more resistance than mortal meat to a weapon designed to penetrate dimensional barriers. Thor roared, more in rage than pain, his wound already beginning to heal but the damage done. He hurled Mjolnir with all his godly strength, the hammer moving faster than sound, faster than thought, trailing lightning and thunder in its wake. The Slayer caught it again. This time he didn't hold it. This time he redirected it, using the hammer's own momentum and force against itself, sending it spinning into the ground where it cratered deep into Asgard's foundations. Thor called it back immediately, but the Slayer had bought himself 3 seconds. 3 seconds was enough. The rocket launcher armed, lock-on mode engaged, multiple targeting systems painting Thor's position. 6 missiles launched simultaneously, their contrails drawing geometric patterns across Asgard's sky. Thor met them head-on, lightning exploding from his body in all directions, detonating the missiles prematurely. But the explosions were not the weapon, they were the distraction. Through the smoke and fire, the Slayer closed distance, his Doomblade extended, moving with the precision of a surgeon and the intent of an executioner. He aimed for Thor's throat, for the kill strike that would end this fight and eliminate an obstacle to his mission. The blow never landed. Gungnir intercepted the Doomblade an inch from Thor's neck, Odin's spear appearing from nowhere with the speed of thought, wielded by the Allfather himself. The impact generated a shockwave that flattened every building within 100 feet. The collision of 2 weapons that existed beyond conventional physics, creating a brief rupture in local reality. Odin stood between the Slayer and his son, the aged god's one eye blazing with power that had ruled the 9 realms since their creation. Enough. The word carried weight that transcended volume, a command spoken with such absolute authority that reality itself paused to acknowledge it. The Einherjar froze mid-charge, Thor's lightning flickered and died. Even the wind stopped blowing. The Slayer, unmoved by divine compulsion, simply adjusted his stance, targeting systems now locked on Odin in addition to Thor. His armor's analysis painted a threat assessment in his HUD: extreme. Possible reality manipulation, recommend maximum aggression. Odin's single eye studied him with uncomfortable intensity, peeling back layers of armor and flesh and bone to examine what lay beneath. The Allfather had witnessed the birth of stars and the death of worlds, had bargained with entities that predated existence, had sacrificed everything for knowledge and power. But what he saw in the Slayer made him pause, made even the Allfather question whether his wisdom was sufficient for this encounter. "You are not of the 9 realms," Odin spoke slowly, carefully, each word chosen with the precision of someone who understood the power of language. "You are not even of this dimension. You come from somewhere else, somewhere older, somewhere that operates under different laws. And yet you come here with purpose, with intent. You come seeking something specific. Tell me what it is, warrior, and perhaps we can avoid further bloodshed." The Slayer remained silent. He had no words for these gods, no explanations that would satisfy their curiosity, no interest in their political games or cosmic machinations. He was here to hunt hell, to burn corruption from its hiding places, to ensure that evil found no refuge in any realm. If Odin helped him, fine. If Odin opposed him, the Allfather would die like every other obstacle. The distinction was irrelevant. Mimir's voice cut through the tension from the courtyard's entrance. "Allfather, if I may be so bold, I think I know what our visitor seeks." Kratos entered the courtyard carrying the severed head, with Atreus close behind. The god of war took in the scene with tactical precision. The crater where Thor and the Slayer had clashed, the bodies of Einherjar who had been unfortunate enough to get too close, the scorch marks and bullet impacts that suggested combat beyond anything the 9 realms had previously witnessed. His grip on the Leviathan axe tightened slightly. Odin turned his attention to Mimir, his expression unreadable. "Speak then, head. What wisdom do you offer? This warrior," Mimir's eyes fixed on the Slayer with something approaching respect, "comes from a place where evil exists in its purest form, a place where demons are not myth or metaphor but literal fact. He's killed things that make our darkest legends look tame, and he's here because something in the 9 realms smells like home to him. Not home as in comfort, but home as in the corruption he spent eternity fighting. He found it in Helheim, rooted deep in Yggdrasil itself, and he destroyed it without asking permission or worrying about consequences. He's not here to conquer or rule or bargain. He's here to cleanse." "Cleanse what?" Thor demanded, still catching his breath. "Divine healing working to repair the damage the Slayer had inflicted." "Hell," Mimir said simply. "Or what hell has touched in the 9 realms?" Odin's expression shifted, something ancient and dark moving behind his eye. "Impossible. The 9 realms are pure, created from Ymir's body, sustained by Yggdrasil's power. There is no corruption here, no outside influence, only the natural order of gods and giants, light and dark, creation and destruction." "Then explain what he burned out of the world tree's roots," Mimir countered. "Explain why Yggdrasil is stronger now than it's been in millennia. Explain why Helheim's dead suddenly feel less torment. He found something we didn't know existed, something that's been feeding on the 9 realms since before any of us can remember. And judging by his reaction to finding it, he's seen it before, in other places, other dimensions, other realities." Atreus stepped forward, his young face serious beyond his years. "Maybe he's here to help us, or maybe he's here to destroy us all," Thor growled, Mjolnir crackling with renewed lightning. The Slayer's response was to turn away from all of them, his sensors detecting another hell signature, this one in Svartalfheim. The Dwarven realm, with its forges and technology, would be a perfect breeding ground for corruption disguised as innovation. He started walking toward the realm tower, his purpose clear even without words. He had no time for debates or political discussions. Every second spent talking was a second hell had to spread, to dig deeper, to prepare defenses. "Wait," Odin commanded, and again reality itself seemed to pause at his word. The Slayer kept walking. Gungnir appeared in his path, the spear planting itself in the ground directly in front of him, a barrier of divine will and ancient power. The Slayer stopped, not because he couldn't move the spear, but because he calculated the cost. Fighting Odin here and now would draw resources away from his primary mission. The Allfather was powerful, possibly powerful enough to actually slow him down, possibly even powerful enough to damage the Praetor suit's systems. That kind of fight would take time, would burn ammunition, would leave him vulnerable to Hell's agents if they existed in other realms. He turned back to face Odin. The Allfather stepped closer, Mimir's warnings apparently insufficient to give him pause. "I will offer you a bargain, stranger. You want to hunt something in my realms? Fine. I want to know what you are, what you truly represent, whether you're a threat to the order I've maintained for eons. So here's the deal. You accept a guide, someone who can vouch for your actions and report back to me. In exchange, I won't order every god and giant and magical creature in the 9 realms to hunt you down. You get to continue your crusade. I get information and insurance. Everyone wins. And if he refuses?" Kratos' voice was granite. "Then he fights all of Asgard," Thor said eagerly, which honestly sounds more fun. The Slayer considered the proposal for exactly 3 seconds. Having a guide would be mildly inconvenient, but potentially useful for local knowledge and navigation. It would also provide cover for his actions, preventing the kind of realm-wide alert that would complicate his mission. And if the guide proved to be more obstacle than asset, elimination was always an option. He gave a single, curt nod. Odin smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "Excellent. Then I assign you the god of war himself. Kratos will accompany you, observe your actions, and keep you from destroying anything that shouldn't be destroyed. He has experience with beings who think themselves above consequences." The Allfather's eye fixed on Kratos with meaningful intensity. "And if you prove to be the threat I suspect you might be, he'll end you. Won't you, Ghost of Sparta?" Kratos' expression remained carved stone, but his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He had hoped to avoid direct entanglement with this stranger, had sensed from the beginning that this path led to complications he did not want, but Odin had cornered him perfectly, using his position as advisor and ally to chain him to this mission. Refusing would mean losing the Allfather's tenuous trust. Accepting meant walking alongside a warrior whose methods mirrored his own darkest past. "I will go," Kratos said finally, "but the boy stays here." "Father," Atreus protested. "No," Kratos' tone permitted no argument. "You will remain in Midgard with Freya. You will continue your training. You will not follow us." Atreus looked like he wanted to argue further, but something in his father's expression stopped him. He nodded reluctantly, understanding that this was one command he could not challenge. Kratos turned to the Slayer, his eyes meeting the green glow of the helmet's visor. "If we are to travel together, know this. I have seen gods fall. I have fought titans and primordials. I have killed Zeus himself and brought Olympus to ruin. Whatever you are, whatever you've done, does not impress me. You step out of line. You threaten the innocent. You become what you hunt, and I will cut you down. Are we clear?" The Slayer's only response was to turn back toward the realm tower. Kratos sighed, handed Mimir to a nearby attendant, and retrieved his Leviathan axe from its back holster. "This is going to be difficult," he muttered. "Oh, brother, you have no idea," Mimir called after him. "That one's got a body count that would make your Greek adventures look like a children's tale. Good luck keeping up." The realm tower accepted them both, its ancient mechanisms calculating the journey to Svartalfheim. As the Bifrost activated, Kratos positioned himself carefully behind and to the left of the Slayer, maintaining tactical awareness while avoiding presenting a threat. He had learned, through centuries of conflict, how to read warriors by their stance and movement. This one moved like he had never not been fighting, every motion efficient, every gesture purposeful, no energy wasted on display or intimidation. They emerged in Svartalfheim to the sound of screaming. The dwarven realm burned. Not with natural fire, but with the sick green flames of argent corruption, the same light that pulsed through the Slayer's armor now consuming the underground city's great forges. Dwarven smiths ran through streets that melted beneath their feet, their legendary craftsmanship useless against a threat they had no framework to understand. And among them, hunting them, killing them, were things that should not exist in the Nine Realms. Hell's demons walked Svartalfheim. Imps bounded across molten metal streams, their claws leaving trails of sulphurous flame. Hell soldiers stalked through the forges, their plasma rifles cutting down any dwarf who tried to mount a defense. Cacodemons floated above the carnage, their massive eyes tracking targets for their explosive spheres to destroy. And at the center of the invasion, coordinating the assault with cold efficiency, stood a Hell Knight, its form towering over the dwarves, its hide impervious to their weapons, its fists crushing bodies with casual brutality. The Slayer saw them, and something in his posture changed. All the careful calculation, all the strategic patience, all the measured approach evaporated in an instant. These were not potential threats or possible corruption. These were his enemies, the beings he had been created to destroy, the evil that justified his existence. They were here, in flesh and blood, attacking innocents, spreading hell's taint. And that meant only one thing: rip and tear. The super shotgun came up firing before Kratos could react. The nearest imp's head exploded in a spray of ichor and bone, its body tumbling backward into a forge fire. Two more died before they could turn toward the sound, their chests opened by point-blank discharge, their screams cut short. The Slayer charged into the mass of demons with a fury that transcended rage, a violence so pure and focused that it became almost holy in its execution. Kratos followed, because what else could he do? The Leviathan axe sang as it left his hand, its frost magic enhanced by dwarven runes and Jotun enchantment. It caught a Hell soldier mid-turn, the blade biting deep into corrupted flesh, freezing the demon's blood in its veins. Kratos recalled the axe with a gesture, the weapon returning to his hand as he moved forward into the chaos. An imp leaped at him from a ruined building, claws extended for his throat. He caught it mid-air, his hand closing around its neck, and threw it into the ground with enough force to crack stone. The blades of chaos emerged from his back, flames roaring to life along their lengths, and he spun them in the pattern he'd perfected over centuries, each strike finding demon flesh, each impact releasing fire that burned corruption. But his violence was measured, tactical, controlled. The Slayer's was not. Kratos watched as the armored warrior moved through the demon horde like a force of nature, like something beyond mortal or divine comprehension. Every shot found its target, every strike ended a life. There was no hesitation, no mercy, no consideration for anything except the systematic annihilation of every demon in sight. An imp tried to flee. The Slayer's precision bolt caught it between the eyes at 50 yards. A Hell soldier raised its shield to block. The heavy cannon's micro-missiles curved around the defense and struck from behind. Two demons tried to flank him. He dashed between them, the doomblade extending to gut them both in a single motion that was more butchery than combat. And then he did something Kratos had never seen. A Hell soldier staggered, its body damaged past its ability to maintain cohesion, glowing with an internal light that suggested imminent death. The Slayer closed on it instantly, his hands finding purchase on its head and jaw. What followed was not a kill. It was an execution, brutal and visceral, rendered in such loving detail that even Kratos, who had performed countless glory kills in his own wars, felt something close to shock. The demon's head came apart in the Slayer's hands, its body erupting with energy that flowed directly into his armor, replenishing ammunition and health with supernatural efficiency. What in hell's name? Kratos breathed. Mimir, still hanging from Kratos' belt, watched with his mouth slightly open. That's not magic. That's not divine power. That's something else entirely. He's converting their life force directly into resources. It's like the demons themselves are designed to fuel him. like their existence serves no purpose except to make him stronger. The cacodemon descended on the Slayer from above, its enormous maw opening to reveal concentric rings of teeth. The Slayer looked up, his combat computer calculating trajectory and timing. The super shotgun fired directly down the creature's throat. The internal detonation was catastrophic, the cacodemon's body rupturing from within, raining gore across the battlefield. The Slayer walked through the falling viscera without slowing, his armor's self-cleaning systems already purging the contamination. Kratos fought his way to the Slayer's position, his axes and blades cutting through demons with practiced efficiency. But he could see the difference in their approaches. He fought to kill, to eliminate threats, to protect the innocent. The Slayer fought to destroy, to eradicate, to ensure that nothing remained. Every kill was total. Every demon that fell would never rise again, never regenerate, never find refuge in another body or dimension. The Slayer wasn't just killing them, he was deleting them from existence. The Hell Knight roared its challenge and charged. The massive demon covered ground with terrifying speed, its fists swinging in arcs that would have pulverized mountains. The Slayer met it head-on, no fear, no hesitation, no tactical withdrawal. He planted his feet and absorbed the first strike against his armor, the impact generating a shockwave that flattened nearby structures. His armor's shields flared, burned through, failed. The second strike caught him in the side, his ribs compressed inside the suit, damage warnings flashing across his HUD. He responded by shoving the super shotgun into the Hell Knight's stomach and firing both barrels. The demon's advance stopped, its internal organs flash-boiled by the kinetic impact. It staggered, bellowing pain and rage, its regeneration already working to repair catastrophic damage. The Slayer didn't give it time. The rocket launcher materialized in his hands, lock-on reticle painting the Hell Knight's chest, and he fired at point-blank range. The explosion consumed them both, fire and force, and shrapnel tearing through the space they occupied. Kratos covered his face against the blast, the heat washing over him even from yards away. When the smoke cleared, the Hell Knight lay in pieces, its body sectioned by explosions and rendered down to base components. The Slayer stood in the crater the battle had created, his armor scorched and damaged but functional, his systems already working on emergency repairs. He looked down at the dead demon, then around at the rest of the invasion force. The other demons were retreating, not fleeing in panic or scattering in fear, but conducting an organized withdrawal, pulling back toward a breach in reality that pulsed with Hell's characteristic energy. The Slayer's sensors locked onto the portal immediately. That was the source, the entry point, the door through which Hell had accessed this realm. Close it, and the invasion ended. Leave it open, and more demons would come, would continue coming until Svartalfheim was consumed. He started running toward it. Kratos pursued, his enhanced physiology letting him keep pace with the Slayer's powered armor. Wait, we need to assess the situation, formulate a plan. The Slayer reached the portal and dove through it. Kratos cursed in ancient Greek and followed, because abandoning his charge to Hell was not an option, no matter how suicidal the decision seemed. The transition was violent, reality inverting around them, dimensional barriers protesting their passage. Kratos felt his divine essence recoil from energies that were fundamentally opposed to life, creation, order. This was not like traveling through the 9 realms via Bifrost or Mystic Gateway. This was like being swallowed by something that wanted them dead. They emerged in Hell, not the Helheim that Hell had ruled, not the Norse afterlife of ice and regret, but the actual, literal hell that the Slayer knew intimately, a dimension of torment and corruption, where physics bent to pain and reality twisted around suffering. The sky was fire and screaming faces. The ground was bone and processed flesh. The air was toxic, corrosive, alive with malevolence. This was hell as it existed across dimensions, a cosmic constant of evil that infected universes like a cancer. Kratos' divine senses screamed at him to leave, to flee, that this place was wrong in ways his godhood could not protect against, but he forced himself to remain standing, to maintain composure, because showing weakness here would be fatal. He looked to the Slayer, expecting to see similar reactions. The armored warrior stood completely at ease. This was his element, his home, in the most terrible sense of the word. He had walked through hell's corridors for eons, had seen sights that would drive gods mad, had breathed this air until it was more familiar than anything else. His armor systems shifted into maximum combat efficiency, his weapons array activating fully, his sensor suite painting tactical data across environments that actively resisted analysis. He was back where he belonged. Hell's architecture rose around them in impossible angles, citadels of agony built from the suffering of countless civilizations. Demons moved through the structures like blood through veins, organizing, preparing, arming for new invasions. This was not a random portal. This was a staging ground, a beachhead, the beginning of Hell's assault on the 9 realms. And somewhere in this corrupted fortress, the architect of the invasion waited. The Slayer started walking deeper into Hell, and Kratos had no choice but to follow. The demons attacked in waves, orchestrated assaults designed to overwhelm through numbers and ferocity. Imps swarmed from every angle, their fireballs streaking through toxic air, their claws seeking any weakness. The Slayer's heavy cannon spoke in a continuous roar, the rotational barrel never stopping, armor-piercing rounds cutting through demonic flesh with mechanical precision. Kratos' Leviathan axe carved through the horde beside him, frost meeting fire, Norse magic battling Hell's corruption. They fought back to back, 2 warriors from different worlds, different wars, different purposes, united temporarily by necessity. Kratos found himself falling into rhythm with the Slayer's movements, anticipating his tactics, covering his blind spots. The armored warrior never spoke, never communicated through words or gestures, but his actions were clear enough. Move forward, kill everything, never stop. A mancubus emerged from a pit of flame, its twin flame cannons mounted on massive arms, its bloated body armored in metal and scar tissue. It opened fire immediately, streams of burning projectiles saturating the space the Slayer and Kratos occupied. The god of war dove behind a pillar of fused bone, the flames washing over his position, the heat intense enough to scar even his divine flesh. The Slayer charged directly at the mancubus. He dashed through the flame stream, his shields absorbing what they could, his armor taking the rest, accepting damage in exchange for closing distance. The ballista fired mid-charge, the argent bolt punching through the mancubus's shoulder armor, exposing vulnerable flesh beneath. The Slayer closed the final yards, the doomblade extending to its full length, and drove it up through the demon's jaw into its brain. The mancubus shuddered, its flame cannon sputtering out, its massive body collapsing forward. The Slayer rode it down, already scanning for the next target. They descended deeper into Hell's architecture, through corridors that bled and breathed, through chambers where the tortured dead were rendered into raw materials for demon construction. Kratos had seen many hells in his existence, Greek underworlds and Norse afterlives, and realms between realms, but this surpassed them all in pure, concentrated evil. This was not punishment or judgment or cosmic balance. This was corruption for its own sake, suffering as industry, pain as power. "How long have you fought this?" Kratos asked, during a brief lull in combat, his voice rough from breathing Hell's air. The Slayer didn't answer, but his weapons shifted slightly, ammunition counts dropping, resource indicators showing exhaustion that never seemed to slow him. "It doesn't matter," Kratos answered himself. "You will fight until it ends or you end. I understand that. I have been that." They reached the heart of the invasion complex, a chamber carved from solidified screaming, where Hell's dimensional breach equipment sat humming with stolen power. The machines were horrific amalgamations of technology and organic matter, argent energy circuits grafted onto living flesh, computer systems powered by tormented souls. At the center of it all, manipulating the controls with hands that had once been mortal, stood a possessed engineer, a UAC scientist who had survived Hell's initial invasion of his dimension only to be corrupted into serving it. The possessed spoke, its voice a harmony of human and demon. "You cannot stop this. Hell has found the 9 realms. Hell will consume them, will add Yggdrasil's power to its arsenal, will use the world tree to spread across dimensions that even we have not reached. "You are too late, Slayer. You are always too late." The Slayer's response was the BFG 9000. The weapon emerged from his back-mounted array with a sound like reality opening, its argent core spinning up to critical mass, its barrel glowing with barely contained energy. Kratos's divine senses screamed warnings, urging him to get clear, to get as far away as possible from what was about to happen. He sprinted for the chamber's entrance, diving through the doorway just as the BFG fired. The blast was not an explosion, it was an erasure. The chamber filled with green light that dissolved everything it touched, demon and machine and architecture melting into component atoms, the argent energy spreading tendrils that sought out any trace of hell's corruption and destroyed it at a fundamental level. The possessed tried to scream but had no mouth left to scream with. The machines tried to function but had no structure left to operate. Everything in the chamber ceased to exist in any meaningful way. The Slayer stood in the center of the annihilation, his armor's shields protecting him from his own weapon's devastation, waiting for the energy to dissipate. When it finally faded, the chamber was gone, replaced by a perfectly smooth sphere of dead matter, every trace of hell's presence scoured away. He turned toward the portal back to Svartalfheim, his mission in this space complete. Kratos stared at the destruction in silence. He had wielded god-killing weapons, had fought with tools of cosmic significance. But this was something else entirely. This was a weapon designed not to kill but to unmake, to deny existence itself to everything it touched. And the Slayer carried it casually, used it with no more ceremony than drawing a knife. "What are you?" Kratos finally asked. The Slayer walked past him toward the portal. They emerged back in Svartalfheim to find the realm changed. The demons were gone, the portal closed, Hell's invasion ended before it could truly begin. Dwarven survivors emerged from hiding, staring at the two warriors who had appeared from nowhere and disappeared into Hell itself to save their realm. The forges, damaged but intact, began to cool in the absence of argent corruption. Smoke rose from 100 fires, but they were natural flames now, cleansing rather than consuming. A dwarf approached, one of the master smiths, his beard singed and his armor scorched. "You saved us. We thought we were finished, that the realm would fall, that the forges would go cold forever. But you went into that cursed portal and you stopped it. Thank you. Thank you both." The Slayer nodded once, then turned away, his sensors already detecting another Hell signature, this one much farther away, much deeper in the Nine Realms structure. Muspelheim, the realm of fire, where Surtur waited for Ragnarok to begin. If Hell had touched that realm, if it had corrupted the fire giants or their eternal flames, the consequences would be catastrophic. "We are not finished," Kratos said quietly, seeing the Slayer's posture shift. "You sense more." The Slayer pulled up his tactical display, projecting it in the air between them. A map of the Nine Realms appeared, reconstructed from Yggdrasil's structure and his armor's scans, with Hell signatures marked in pulsing red. Helheim, cleared. Svartalfheim, cleared. But signatures remained in Muspelheim, Niflheim, and surprisingly, Asgard itself. The corruption ran deeper than anyone had known, embedded in the Nine Realms foundation. "Odin needs to know," Kratos said, reaching for his Bifrost stone to summon transport. The Slayer's hand shot out, catching Kratos' wrist with surprising gentleness but absolute firmness. His helmet turned toward the god of war, the green visor bright with meaning. Not yet, not until they knew the full extent. Because if Hell had reached Asgard, if it had corrupted the seat of divine power, then the Allfather himself might be compromised, and confronting a corrupted Odin without preparation would doom them all. Kratos understood. He nodded slowly, releasing the Bifrost stone. "Then we continue the hunt. But know this, if we find that Odin himself is corrupted, I will not hesitate. He has been both ally and enemy, but I will not permit Hell to rule the Nine Realms through him." The Slayer's posture suggested agreement. They traveled to Muspelheim through a side passage, avoiding the realm tower to prevent alerting anyone to their continued investigation. The journey took them through Midgard's wilderness, across mountains where giants once walked, through valleys where the first battles of the 9 realms had been fought. Kratos led the way, his knowledge of hidden paths and secret routes proving valuable. The Slayer followed, his weapons ready, his sensors scanning constantly for any sign of demonic presence. Muspelheim emerged before them as a realm of eternal fire, where volcanoes erupted in continuous streams, where the ground was molten rock and the sky burned with perpetual dawn. This was the home of the fire giants, the realm that would one day burn the 9 realms to ash during Ragnarok. It was beautiful in its destruction, terrifying in its power, and absolutely perfect for hell to hide its presence. They found the corruption in the deep forges, where Surtur's lieutenants crafted weapons for the final war. Hell had not invaded this realm outright but had instead seeded it with its influence, corrupting the fire itself, turning the flames of creation into flames of damnation. The fire giants worked their forges unknowingly, crafting weapons that carried hell's taint, preparing armaments that would serve evil when Ragnarok finally came. The Slayer identified the source immediately. A hell priest. The creature stood in the heart of the deepest forge, its robes marking it as one of Hell's religious leaders, its power derived not from strength but from corruption and manipulation. Hell priests were architects of damnation, beings that spread Hell's influence through cultural and spiritual infection rather than military conquest. This one had been here for years, decades, slowly turning Muspelheim's flames toward evil, ensuring that when the fire giants finally marched to war, they would be serving Hell whether they knew it or not. The priest saw them and smiled. Doomslayer, we wondered when you would find this realm. We left such obvious signs in the others, hoping you would spend your fury there while our true work progressed here. But you are more thorough than we hoped. No matter. You cannot kill me without destroying this forge, and you cannot destroy this forge without dooming this realm. We have made ourselves necessary. We are part of the system now. The Slayer raised his plasma rifle, charging it to maximum output. Wait, Kratos commanded, his hand on the Slayer's arm. If what it says is true, we need another approach. Destroying the forge could collapse Muspelheim's structure, could trigger Ragnarok prematurely. We need to separate the corruption from the realm before we can eliminate it. The Hell Priest laughed, a sound like glass grinding. The mortal shows wisdom the Slayer lacks. But there is no separation possible. We have become integral. Kill us, and you kill the realm. Leave us, and we continue our work. You have already lost. The Slayer's helmet tilted, his combat computer analyzing the problem. The Hell Priest had woven itself into Muspelheim's argent infrastructure, grafting Hell's energy patterns onto the realm's natural fire essence. Removing it forcefully would indeed cause catastrophic damage, but the priest had made one critical error. It had assumed the Slayer would approach this tactically, that he would consider consequences and collateral damage. It had forgotten what the Slayer was. He holstered the plasma rifle and drew the crucible. The blade ignited with pure argent energy, white-hot and perfectly focused, a weapon that existed to separate corruption from essence, evil from existence. It was the only tool capable of doing what needed to be done, not destroying the forge but purifying it, cutting away Hell's taint while leaving Muspelheim's structure intact. But using it required precision beyond mortal capability, focus beyond divine skill. One misstep would cause exactly the catastrophe the Hell Priest predicted. The Slayer had never misstepped. He moved with the blade, not cutting but conducting, drawing Hell's corruption out of the forge like poison from a wound. The crucible traced patterns through air and fire, following Hell's energy signature through Muspelheim's infrastructure, isolating it, containing it, pulling it free. The Hell Priest screamed as it felt its connection severing, its integration collapsing, its power being extracted and isolated. Within minutes, it stood alone, no longer part of the realm, just another demon in a place that had no tolerance for demons. No, this is impossible. You cannot. The Slayer's fist went through its chest. The glory kill was executed with the same precision as the extraction. The Hell Priest's life force consumed, its corruption burned away, its influence erased. The forge shuddered, its flames changing from Hell's green-tinged fire back to pure elemental red. Muspelheim began to heal, its natural order reasserting itself, the contamination purged. Kratos watched in silence, his respect for the Slayer's capabilities growing despite himself. This was not mere violence. This was surgical elimination of evil, executed with such skill that it approached art. The Slayer fought hell not with rage alone, but with understanding, with knowledge earned through endless war, with expertise that made him the perfect counter to everything hell represented. "You have done this before," Kratos said quietly. "Many times." The Slayer nodded once. "How many worlds have you saved?" The Slayer's posture suggested a number too large to easily communicate. "And how many have you failed to save?" The Slayer went completely still. For the first time since arriving in the Nine Realms, his focus wavered. The question had struck something deep, some wound that never healed. Kratos recognized that reaction intimately. He had carried similar wounds, similar failures, similar ghosts that no amount of vengeance could exorcise. "I understand," Kratos said. "The ones you save never erase the ones you lost. The victories never balance the defeats. You fight on because stopping means accepting that they died for nothing. I have been there. I am there still." The Slayer's helmet turned to face Kratos fully, and for a moment there was something like recognition between them. Two warriors, two killers, two beings who had transcended their original purpose and become weapons that could never be sheathed. Different origins, different methods, different gods, but the same core wound. The moment passed. The Slayer's sensors detected the last major hell signature in the Nine Realms, and this one made him pause. It emanated from Asgard, specifically from Odin's personal chambers, from the All-Father's most secure sanctum. Hell had not just touched the Nine Realms peripherally. It had reached the very seat of power, and that meant their mission had just become infinitely more complicated. "We must approach this carefully," Kratos warned. "If Odin is compromised, direct confrontation would trigger realm-wide war. The other gods would defend him without question. We would face Thor, Heimdall, Tyr if he still lives, possibly Freya and her Valkyries. We need proof before we act." The Slayer agreed with a nod, then pulled up his tactical display again. He highlighted the Hell signature in Asgard, then zoomed in, refining the scan. The corruption wasn't in Odin himself, but beneath his halls, in vaults that predated the current Asgardian structure. Something ancient, something sealed away, something Hell had contaminated long before any current god had taken power. "The old vaults," Kratos breathed, "where Odin stores artifacts too dangerous to use or destroy. If Hell has corrupted something there, has turned one of those sealed weapons into a beacon for its influence. They needed to reach those vaults without alerting Odin or his security, needed to investigate, identify, and potentially destroy whatever Hell had claimed, and they needed to do it quickly, before whatever corruption existed there could spread further or trigger whatever plan Hell had enacted. Kratos knew a way. A path through Asgard's undercity, through passages that even the All-Father's ravens could not reach. But it would require trust between them, trust that neither had fully earned yet. He looked at the Slayer, at the faceless helmet and the weapons that had killed a god, and made a choice. "Follow me, and if I betray you, you will kill me as you killed Hell. I accept that risk." The Slayer's response was to gesture forward. Trust was not necessary, tactical cooperation was enough. They entered Asgard through a forgotten gate, a passage that dated back to before Odin's conquest, when the realm belonged to other powers. Kratos led them through catacombs filled with the forgotten dead, through archives of lost knowledge, through chambers where reality itself seemed thin and uncertain. The Slayer's presence caused reactions in the ancient magic that permeated these spaces. Asgard's defensive systems, recognizing him as foreign but unable to categorize the threat. They reached the vault level without raising alarms, the Slayer's stealth systems proving as sophisticated as his weapons. The vaults themselves were sealed with multiple layers of protection. Runes of binding, divine wards, physical locks that would resist even Thor's strength. But Hell's corruption had found a way through, had exploited some weakness or ancient oversight to establish a beachhead in Asgard's heart. The corrupted vault stood at the corridor's end, its door marked with symbols that predated Norse civilization. Kratos recognized some of them from his travels through other realms, other pantheons. This was not native Asgardian magic, but something imported, something claimed from another culture, another god, another war. And Hel had found it, had seeded it with corruption, had been using it to spread influence through Asgard's structure for longer than anyone suspected. The Slayer placed charges on the vault door, shaped explosives calibrated to breach without causing catastrophic damage. The detonation was surprisingly quiet, more implosion than explosion, the door's integrity failing at precise structural points. It swung open with a groan of ancient metal, revealing darkness beyond that seemed to absorb light. They entered together. The vault's interior defied physical sense, space expanding beyond what the structure should contain. Artifacts lined walls that stretched into infinity. Weapons of extinct gods, relics from dead worlds, prizes taken from wars no living being remembered. And at the chamber's center, pulsing with Hel's distinctive energy, sat a device that made even the Slayer pause. A Hel crucible, corrupted twin to the purification blade he carried. Where his crucible separated evil from essence, this one did the opposite. It corrupted essence into evil, turned purity into taint, weaponized Hel's influence into a tool that could contaminate dimensions. The Slayer's databases identified it immediately. One of 3 Hel crucibles created during Hel's war against heaven, weapons designed to turn celestial beings into demons, to corrupt angels into devils. One had been destroyed. One remained in Hel's deepest vaults. The third, apparently, had found its way to Asgard, to Odin's collection, to a place where it could work its corruption in secret. The blade pulsed as it sensed the Slayer's presence, recognizing its opposite, calling out to the darkness that supposedly existed in all beings. But the Slayer had been exposed to such weapons before, had stood against corruption's direct application more times than could be counted. His will did not bend. His purpose did not waver. He was beyond corruption now, had been burned so clean by rage and loss that there was nothing left for evil to grab hold of. He raised his own crucible to destroy its dark twin. Heimdall appeared from nowhere, Gjallarhorn at his lips, his all-seeing eyes wide with alarm. "Stop! Do you have any idea what you're about to do? That blade maintains the seal on something far worse. Destroy it, and you'll release." Too late. The Slayer's crucible struck the Hel crucible dead center, pure argent meeting corrupted, essence meeting evil in a collision that generated forces the vault was never designed to contain. The Hel crucible shattered, its structure failing, its power dispersing, and beneath where it had stood, previously sealed by its dark energy, a chasm opened into something that existed outside the 9 realms, outside Yggdrasil, outside the known structure of reality. The Black Rune prison, Ginnungagap, the primordial void from which the 9 realms were born, reached up through the opened chasm. But this was not the pure void of creation. This was Ginnungagap corrupted, infected with Hel's essence during the moment of the 9 realms formation, contaminated at the instant of existence. And within that void, something stirred, something that had waited since the dawn of the Norse cosmos for a chance to emerge. Surtur stepped through the chasm, but not the Surtur that waited in Muspelheim for Ragnarok. This was Surtur Prime, the original fire giant, the being whose flames had been split and diminished to create the lesser version that Norse prophecy spoke of. This was Surtur before containment, before sealing, before the gods had found a way to chain cosmic fire itself, and he burned with Hel's corruption. His flames no longer red but the sick green of argent energy, his purpose no longer the cleansing of Ragnarok but the damnation of all existence. His voice shook the vault, shook Asgard, shook Yggdrasil itself. Free, finally free. The All-Father's prison fails, the Hellslayer's arrogance opens the way. Now the 9 realms burn, now all worlds burn, now existence itself learns what true fire means. Heimdall fled, sprinting for the vault exit, his duty to warn Odin overriding his warrior's pride. Kratos moved to follow, but the Slayer grabbed his shoulder, holding him in place. The message was clear. Running would not save them. Surtur Prime would burn through Asgard in minutes, would reach the other realms in hours, would reduce the entire Norse cosmos to ash before anyone could mount a defense. The only chance was to stop him here, now, in this moment before he could fully manifest his power. "You intend to fight him alone?" Kratos demanded. "He is primal fire, the source of Muspelheim's essence, unkillable by conventional means. Even I could not." The Slayer released Kratos and turned to face Surtur Prime, his weapons array activating to full combat configuration. Every tool, every weapon, every system the Praetor suit contained came online simultaneously. This was not going to be a surgical operation or a careful extraction. This was going to be a war of annihilation, winner take all, no mercy given or asked. Surtur Prime's laugh was the sound of stars dying. "You dare challenge me, mortal? I am the first flame, the burning that preceded existence, the heat from which all energy derives. Your weapons are nothing. Your armor is nothing. You are an insect throwing itself against a sun." The Slayer's response was to activate the Unmakia. The weapon that even hell feared emerged from his back-mounted array, its form shifting and morphing as it powered up, its structure existing partially outside normal space. The Unmakia was not a gun, but a concept made solid, a weapon that fired not bullets but denial, each shot erasing a small part of reality and everything in it. The Slayer had only used it against Hell's most powerful titans, against enemies that transcended conventional physics. Using it here, in Asgard's vaults, with the 9 realms structure already destabilized, was insane. He didn't care. The Unmakia fired, and Surtur Prime screamed. Not in pain, but in outrage, in disbelief that something could actually hurt him, could actually deny his primordial essence. The beam of unreality carved through his flames, through his form, through the very concept of what he was. Surtur staggered, his fires flickering, his corruption wavering. For a moment, just a moment, he looked vulnerable. Then hell itself responded. A portal tore open behind Surtur, not the small dimensional breaches the Slayer had been closing, but a full gate, a massive wound in reality through which hell's true power could flow. Titangent-class demons began emerging, Hell Knights by the dozen, barons in full armor, cyber-demons with weapons that could level continents. Hell had been waiting for this moment, had planned for the Hell Crucible's destruction, had anticipated that the Slayer would do exactly what he did. This was a trap, elaborate and perfect, designed to catch the one being Hell feared above all others. The Slayer understood immediately. This fight was unwinnable, not because he couldn't kill these demons, couldn't even kill Surtur Prime, but because the cost would be catastrophic. The 9 realms would collapse under this kind of combat. Yggdrasil would burn, billions of souls would die. He had seen this scenario before, in other dimensions, other realities. He had always made the same choice. He would buy time for evacuation. The Slayer charged into Hell's army, the BFG 9000 firing, the crucible blazing, every weapon he possessed unleashing maximum destruction. Demons died by the hundreds, their bodies piling up, their assault momentarily staggered. But more kept coming, endless waves pouring through the portal, Hell committing everything to this moment. Surtur Prime recovered, his flames intensifying, his corruption spreading through the vault and into Asgard proper. Kratos understood what the Slayer was doing and felt something close to despair. This warrior, this being from beyond the 9 realms, was sacrificing himself to buy time, was choosing certain death to save a world he had no connection to. It was noble and stupid, and absolutely what Kratos himself would have done in similar circumstances. He moved to join the fight, but Heimdall returned with reinforcements. Thor, Heimdall, a dozen Einherjar, Freya with her Valkyries, all burst into the vault ready for battle. They saw Surtur Prime, they saw Hell's army, they saw the Slayer standing alone against impossible odds, and to their credit, they didn't hesitate. Thor's Mjolnir led the charge, lightning exploding among demons that had never experienced Norse magic. Freya's Sidra wove defensive barriers, protecting the Einherjar as they engaged Hell Knights in close combat. Heimdall's Gjallarhorn sounded, calling every warrior in Asgard to battle, summoning forces that could turn the tide. But it wasn't enough. Hell had prepared for divine intervention. The tyrant emerged from the portal, a demon so powerful that entire dimensions had fallen before it, equipped with weapons that could kill gods. It locked onto Thor immediately, recognizing the greatest threat, its arm cannon charging with energy that made the Bifrost look tame. The Slayer intercepted the shot meant for Thor, his armor taking the full force of a blast designed to annihilate divine flesh. His shields failed instantly, his armor's outer layer vaporized, systems across his suit went critical, damage warnings cascading through his HUD, but he remained standing, his body's enhancements refusing to acknowledge what should have been instant death. Thor stared in shock. "What are you?" The Slayer didn't answer. He raised the BFG 9000 one more time, aimed it at the tyrant and the portal behind it, and charged the weapon beyond maximum capacity. The Argent core began to destabilize, energy levels climbing past safety margins, past theoretical limits, past the point where the weapon should explode and take everything nearby with it. Kratos realized what he was doing. Everyone out. Now, he's going to overload the Soba. The BFG detonated. But it wasn't an explosion. It was an implosion, a localized black hole of Argent energy that consumed everything within a 100-foot radius. The tyrant, half the demon army, Surtur Prime's manifesting form, the Hell portal itself, all got sucked into the detonation's core and crushed down to quantum foam. The vault collapsed inward, reality folding around the point of annihilation, and then everything went white. When the light faded, the vault was gone. The entire level of Asgard where it had existed was gone. A perfectly smooth sphere of empty space remained, several 100 feet in diameter, where matter had been converted directly into energy and then dispersed across dimensional boundaries. No demons, no Surtur Prime, no portal, no Slayer. Kratos searched the destruction, his divine senses straining to detect any life sign, any indication that the armored warrior had survived. Nothing. The Slayer had been at ground zero when the BFG detonated, had been holding the weapon when it overloaded. No one could survive that. No armor could protect against that. He was gone, erased, his sacrifice complete. The Einherjar were silent. Even Thor looked somber. They had witnessed a warrior destroy himself to save them, had seen someone they had fought against and barely understood give everything to stop Hell's invasion. It was a hero's death, the kind of end that earned sagas and eternal glory. Then Heimdall pointed upward. Look, in Yggdrasil's branches, high above Asgard, where the world tree's golden light was strongest, something was happening. The wound the Slayer had torn to enter the 9 realms, the breach that had started this entire chain of events, was closing. But as it sealed, something fell through, something ejected by the dimensional barrier as it healed. A figure, armored and burned and very much alive, tumbled through the sky and crashed into Asgard's outer gardens with enough force to crater the ground. The Slayer rose slowly, his armor so damaged that bare flesh showed through gaps in the plating. His helmet was cracked, revealing part of a face that had not seen full sunlight in longer than most civilizations had existed. He looked up at the assembled gods and warriors, and for the first time since arriving in the 9 realms, he spoke. His voice was rough from disuse, each word forced out with visible effort. Hell, protocol, crucible, detonation, dimensional, ejection, standard, extraction. Kratos began to laugh, a sound that started as chuckle and built to genuine amusement. You planned this. You knew overloading the BFG would trigger some kind of emergency escape. You deliberately let us think you were sacrificing yourself. The Slayer shook his head slightly. Acceptable. Risk. Survival. Not. Guaranteed. Mission. Priority. Odin descended from his hall, his ravens circling overhead, his face grave with understanding. The Allfather had seen the entire battle through Munin's eyes, had witnessed a warrior from beyond creation nearly die to save his realm, and he had seen what lay beneath Asgard, what corruption Hell had planted in his vaults, what threat he had been blind to for millennia. You saved us, Odin said simply. You came to our realm uninvited, killed one of my children, destroyed my vaults, and released a primordial threat. And in doing so, you saved us from a corruption we did not know existed. I owe you a debt that the 9 realms cannot repay." The Slayer's damaged helmet turned toward the Allfather. "Debt. Unnecessary. Hell. Exists. Will. Return. Always. Returns. Until destroyed. Completely. Then we will be ready," Thor declared, Mjolnir crackling with renewed purpose. "You've shown us the real enemy. Next time Hell tries this, we'll be waiting." "Next time," Freya added, her Valkyries nodding agreement, "you will have allies. The 9 realms do not forget those who bleed for us." The Slayer nodded acceptance, then turned to leave. His mission here was complete. Hell's presence in the 9 realms had been exposed and mostly purged. The gods were aware and would be vigilant. There was nothing more he could accomplish here. It was time to find the next dimension, the next infected reality, the next place where Hell thought itself safe. Kratos stopped him with a hand on his shoulder. "You could stay, rest, heal, let your armor repair. We have resources, magic, technology that could help you." The Slayer's response was to pull up his tactical display one final time. New Hell signatures appeared across the display, hundreds of them, thousands, spanning dimensions and realities beyond counting. The 9 realms were just one small corner of an infinite battlefield. Hell existed everywhere, in every universe, in every corner of creation, and someone had to fight it. Someone had to be the eternal warrior, the endless crusade, the rage that never dimmed. Others need. Hell spreads. War continues. He started walking toward the realm tower, toward the breach in Yggdrasil, toward his exit from the 9 realms. The gods watched him go, none moving to stop him, all understanding that some warriors cannot be kept, cannot be tamed, cannot rest while evil exists. Mimir spoke quietly from Kratos' belt. "That, brother, is what I think the poets would call a living legend. Except he's not trying to be, he's just trying to finish a job that will never end. He is what I was," Kratos said softly, "what I might be still, a weapon that thinks itself a warrior, but he has not lost himself completely. He chose to save us when he could have simply moved on. There is still something human in there, buried beneath the rage and purpose." Atreus appeared from behind a ruined wall, his eyes wide with awe. He had disobeyed his father's orders, had followed through hidden paths to witness the final battle. "Father, is he really leaving? He just saved all the 9 realms. He's a hero." "He is not a hero," Kratos corrected. "He is something beyond that, something necessary. And yes, he is leaving. Because there are no statues or sagas where he goes, only enemies and oblivion." The Slayer reached the realm tower and activated it one final time. The Bifrost accepted his presence more easily now, Yggdrasil recognizing him as someone who had fought for its survival. The journey back to the dimensional breach would take only seconds, and then he would be gone, back to the eternal war, back to the endless hunt. But before the Bifrost activated, Odin's voice echoed across the realm, carrying words of power and binding. "Slayer, unknown warrior, savior of the 9 realms, know that you are welcome here, always. Should you need refuge, should you require aid, should you simply wish to remember what you fight for, the 9 realms will open to you. This is my oath, sealed with the All-Father's word, binding across all branches of Yggdrasil. You are marked as friend and ally, now and forever." The mark appeared on the Slayer's armor, a rune of passage that would allow him to enter the 9 realms without violence, to pass through Heimdall's watch unchallenged, to walk among gods without suspicion. It was a gift beyond measure, offered to someone who would likely never use it but who had earned it absolutely. The Slayer acknowledged it with a single nod, and then the Bifrost took him. He emerged at the breach in Yggdrasil, the wound that had brought him here now almost fully healed. His damaged armor's systems were already working on repairs, argent energy from his reserves being redirected to restore functionality. Within hours, he would be combat-ready again. Within days, the armor would be as if this battle had never happened. Physical damage was temporary. The mission was eternal. He looked back at the 9 realms one final time, seeing them through his helmet's enhanced vision, watching Asgard rebuild, seeing the gods gather to discuss what they had learned, observing Kratos return to his son with words of caution and pride. It was a good realm, worth saving. The people here would endure, they would remember, and if hell returned, they would fight. The Slayer turned away and stepped through the dimensional breach, letting it close behind him, sealing the 9 realms off from his journey. His senses immediately began scanning for the next hell signature, the next infected dimension, the next battle in a war that would never end. He found one within seconds. A reality where demons posed as angels, where hell had conquered heaven itself and ruled from celestial thrones. He set his course and began walking. In Asgard, Mimir watched the breach seal and smiled sadly. And that, as they say, is that. The Slayer came, saw, conquered, and left. The 9 realms are safer for his presence, and we'll probably never see him again, unless hell gets really stupid and tries to come back here. They will, Kratos said with certainty. Evil is persistent, but so is the Slayer, and when that day comes, we will be ready, as he taught us to be. Thor raised Mjolnir toward the now sealed breach, a salute to a warrior he had fought and then fought beside. To the Slayer, may his enemies fear him, may his battles be legendary, and may he find what he's looking for in the end. And what do you think he's looking for? Atreus asked. Kratos was quiet for a long moment, remembering the Slayer's posture when asked about failures, remembering the pause that suggested old pain never healed. Peace. An end to the war, a moment where he can finally stop, but he will never find it, because evil never rests. So neither can he. That's sad, Atreus said simply. Yes, Kratos agreed, but necessary. Someone must stand eternal watch. Someone must be the rage that never dims. Better one warrior bearing that burden willingly than forcing it on those unprepared. They left the breach site, returning to Midgard, to their home, to the life they were building in the aftermath of divine wars. Behind them, Asgard began the slow process of healing, both from the Slayer's invasion and from the corruption he had exposed. The 9 realms would be different now, more aware, more cautious, more prepared for threats that came from outside their mythic structure. In Hell's deepest sanctums, where demon lords plotted across dimensions, the failure in the 9 realms was analyzed and catalogued, Surtur Prime's capture reversed, the Hell Crucible lost, infrastructure destroyed, multiple realms purged, all because the Slayer had found them. The lesson was clear and had been learned countless times before. Where the Doomslayer walks, Hell retreats. There can be no victory against him, only survival. Only hoping he turns his attention elsewhere. But Hell was patient. Hell was eternal. Hell would try again, in other worlds, other dimensions, other corners of creation, where the Slayer's attention was focused elsewhere. The war would continue, because neither side could stop. Hell because its nature demanded expansion. The Slayer because his nature demanded annihilation of that expansion. And somewhere between those forces, in the infinite space of creation, existence continued. Worlds lived and died, civilizations rose and fell, good and evil fought their eternal battles. Most would never know the Slayer existed. Most would never realize how close they came to damnation. They would live their lives, love and fight and dream, never knowing that their peace was bought with one warrior's endless war. That was acceptable. The Slayer did not fight for glory or recognition. He fought because evil existed and someone had to stop it. The reason was that simple and that absolute. No complexity, no moral ambiguity, no shades of gray. Just the mission, repeated endlessly across time and space, until either Hell was destroyed completely or he finally fell. Neither outcome seemed likely, so the war continued, and the Slayer walked on, through dimensions where physics was suggestion and reality was optional, through spaces where time ran backward and forward simultaneously, through the dark places between universes where only evil and determination could survive. His armor repaired itself, his weapons reloaded, his purpose never wavered. Hell existed. He would destroy it. That was the law of his existence, the singular truth that defined everything he was. And as long as evil persisted, as long as corruption spread, as long as innocent beings suffered under hell's influence, he would be there, walking through fire, carrying death, never stopping, never resting, never showing mercy to those who showed none. He was the Doomslayer, and his war was eternal. Behind him, the 9 realms continued their existence, forever changed by his brief passage. The gods told stories of the armored warrior who came from nowhere, fought hell itself, and disappeared back into legend. The dwarves of Svartalfheim crafted new weapons based on principles they had observed in his arsenal. The dead in Helheim knew freedom they had not experienced in ages, Hell's death having broken chains that had bound them unjustly. And in Midgard, a young boy named Atreus added to his journal a new entry. Today, I saw what true warriors become when the war never ends. Father says the Slayer has lost himself to his mission, but I think he's found himself. He knows exactly what he is and what he must do. No doubt, no hesitation, no fear. I don't know if that's admirable or terrifying, maybe both. Kratos read the entry over his son's shoulder and said nothing. But that night, standing under stars that had witnessed countless wars, he raised a toast with Mimir to absent warriors and eternal battles. To those who sacrificed their humanity so others could keep theirs. To the rage that protected the innocent by destroying the guilty. To the Slayer. The 9 realms slept peacefully that night, unaware of how close they had come to damnation, unaware of the corruption that had been growing in their foundations, unaware of the warrior who had burned it away. They dreamed their dreams and lived their lives and worried about their small concerns, as they should, because someone else was worrying about hell, someone who would never stop, someone who would fight until existence itself ended or evil was finally, completely, eternally destroyed. And in the infinite expanse of creation, in dimensions without number, on worlds without names, that fight continued. One warrior, infinite enemies, eternal war. This was his purpose, this was his function, this was his choice, and he would see it through to whatever end awaited, whether that was hell's destruction, or his own final death, or some conclusion beyond mortal comprehension. Until that end came, he would do what he had always done, what he was created to do, what he had perfected across eons and dimensions. He would rip and tear, until it was done,